welcome to the Unconventional Intentional Homemaking podcast. I forgot what we were nearly there. Today we're going to talk about productivity and intentional living and slow living. Specifically, like how those things compete or work together or don't.
Yes, that's a lot of concepts.
Yeah.
And I like to think that they all work together, but they don't always.
No, and they can be a complete opposition to each other.
Yeah.
But first, I am Issa, and this is my workplace.
No.
And we make content surrounding homemaking and intentional living and stuff like that.
And stuff like that, yes.
So we have done podcasts on us defining intentional living before, but we should probably do a quick definition now. So what does intentional living mean to you?
So we defined intentional living as it's the intention behind the why you're doing something and the how you do it. So having a goal and a plan.
Yeah, doing things because there's a reason for you to do them, but not just because.
Yeah, and understanding what that reason is to make sure that you are achieving that. It's very easy to go off and do something and then get to the end and realise that's not actually what I needed after all.
Oh yeah, no, that describes my entire life.
Yeah, I'm sure we've all done it.
So why we wanted to talk about this is we seem to live in a world that is obsessed with productivity and time management and getting as much done in the day as you possibly can. And we ourselves are like this.
I definitely have one of those efficient personalities, shall we say. Yeah, this is definitely... should we just say that's my personality, in fact?
Efficient.
I am efficient and productive is just bliss. It's very much a core part of, if I haven't felt like I've progressed, then...
Oh, then the whole house knows about it.
Yes. Because when I get stressed, I verbalise my stress.
So that's actually productivity is your personality. I actually really value efficiency, but not necessarily productivity. I like to do things in an efficient manner, and I hate it when things are inefficient.
So I'm both. I'm very much a, what am I trying to achieve, and what else is on my to-do list that I can get done simultaneously. So I'm very much a multitasker.
Yeah, but the core of this is that if you look at social media, you go online, you hit YouTube, it's not too long before you come across a thumbnail with a big clock in it or a timer, like we've done those thumbnails. Basically encouraging you to be more productive, and that can seem in opposite to intentional or slow living. I don't think they necessarily have to be, but in a world where we are obsessed with productivity, we also seem to be obsessed with slowing down.
I suspect that one is a reaction to the other though. So we've got into this hyper-productivity mindset.
When did that start? Sorry,
Sidebar.
When did that start?
Probably as a guess, the industrial era, where manufacturing became much more fast-paced, and therefore everyone had to do everything that much faster. Whereas before, everything was that much slower. Everything was more handmade. So it was expected that making an item of clothing would take months.
But I don't think that happened overnight necessarily.
No,
I think that was a slow process from, things can happen much quicker, to now we seem to at a point where everything must happen as quick as possible.
So I think technology massively, like when the only way to communicate with someone was a very, very short telegram or snail mail. Like that was your limitation, and international if you're dealing with someone internationally, that was literally months between communications.
We're talking about the mail as we know it and knew it. Like go back not long before, and it would be 3 days to send a letter by horse, 20 miles down the road.
Yeah, and so I think that our ability to communicate has massively increased that expectation of product, and then that has become, how much can you get done in a day? Because now the limiting factor is the person, not the technology.
McDonald's and Ford, they were the ones that really implemented that. I can't remember what it's called, but it's that, there is a word for it, and I learnt it at uni, but that was a while ago now.
Well, there's going to geek out, there's Six Sigma, there's Shingo, Single.
No, that's new. That's new stuff. I'm talking about the old one.
So Ford was a big part of that highly efficient.
It's the least amount of movement. So like McDonald's kitchen, and we studied McDonald's specifically because the kitchen is set up so that you don't have to move.
Lean manufacturing. That's the one. So
yeah.
Six Sigma is like an extension of my understanding of that. So yeah, so lean manufacturing is you do the most amount of things in the most efficient and effective way.
Yeah.
And you plan, like kitchens. Kitchens are
plan your
planned
space
so that your movement between the fridge, the chopping board, and the sink and the cooker are as little as possible.
Yeah. So McDonald's really brought that to like the real world and everyday people, and I think Ford did the same
For manufacturing, yeah. And so, yeah, then again, the limiting factor is no longer how fast can communication go, it's how fast can the people move.
Yeah.
And then there's the concept of you can actually only hold 5 things in your mind at once, plus or minus 2. So the average person can hold between 3 and 7 things in their mind at once. And if that's taken up,
overtime then.
yeah. So if you're taking up with, if your to-do list is quite long, and then you've got things on top of that, and then you've got appointments to remember, and then you've got, it can quickly, like if you're thinking more than 3 steps ahead, that's it. Your brain is full. And I think that slow living is a counter to this.
Yeah, because that seems to have come up quite recently. I remember growing up in the 90s and early 2000s, that seems to have been the height of productivity for like the average person, and then that got more and more embedded, I think, with and all of the different methods. Like you've just reeled off a bunch of things. There's so many more. There are so many more ways. And then slow living, intentional living seems to have come out more recently than that.
Yeah, as a counter to, you know, that realism of the human is now the limiting factor. Let's try and work with the human, not against the human. So the whole point of bullet journaling is to get all of those tasks out of your head and onto paper, so you don't have to hold them in your head anymore.
Yeah, no, but that's still productivity. I'm talking about the intentional, which was the reaction, because everyone got tired.
Yeah.
So I don't want to do this anymore.
So then once with the bullet journaling, that's also intentional living / slow living, because the next step to once you've got all your lists down is to prioritise them, is to say what I have to get done and what I cannot bother with. And then that is the slow living bit. It's the intentional prioritisation of your time and your energy. And then we added a whole bunch of wellness on top, because like people have time to do that now. So I think that once things like the bullet journal and all of these methods came around, that still wasn't, you know, there's now some countries that are literally reacting to this by putting laws in place. So for example, in France, there's now a law that means that your job can't annoy and harass you at the weekend. That's time off time.
Yeah, because I think actually even bullet journaling was a symptom of this productivity issue, because if anyone has ever looked into bullet journaling, the average social media YouTube video you see on bullet journaling, that takes hours to do.
Oh God, they're so beautiful.
They're so beautiful. And I know that that's self-care for a lot of people.
Even that's self-care while being productive, because you're also making something pretty. In the cases of the content creators, you're making something aesthetic for your content. So when does that stop being self-care and start being, I have to do this, not because you want to, but because you've now got a dependency on it for your work.
Like, because we've gone through loads of iterations of bullet journaling. Like, we started with a really simple, just lined notebook to do the concept.
It looked so awful.
It did. We still got them.
I do.
But then we got into a whole bunch of creators, and we started buying the rainbow notebooks. So we did rainbows in.
Oh, that was a whole thing.
That was a whole thing.
How to complicate bullet journaling.
It was like we both wanted to have rainbow bullet journals where we would follow the colours of the rainbow with each bullet journal. So we decided at opposite ends and met in the middle, and it was very complicated. And that's before you even get onto the inside.
Yes.
And for me especially, it became much less about being productive and much more, it became almost a chore
Yeah.
to complete.
And the irony was you had these really, really, really lovely looking spreads that you then just didn't use.
Yeah.
So then it was just a time sink that wasn't even giving you that time back with productivity.
Yeah, it wasn't giving me the slow, intentional creativity anymore, and it wasn't productive.
So this is when we go back and earlier on when we said, be careful with what you're doing, make sure it's achieving your goals, understand why you're doing things. Why did we want it to be aesthetic? Because it looked nice. What were we achieving with that?
Yeah.
It was fun. Could we have done that in a better way? Yes, we could have just got some colouring books out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We could achieve the same thing. But yeah, I basically made my bullet journal completely useless. So then we moved on and we went back to different ways, and we still test out different ways.
Yeah.
And
So
stuff.
my current method is I make personal spreads on the computer and print them out, and then I fill them out daily. And that's still a time sink because every month I have to make a new month. But those are the spreads that work for me, but I don't do them by hand.
So, and then I got really lazy this year and I just use your spreads. And as a result, I've stopped using my bullet journal completely.
Because they're my spreads.
Because they're your spreads and they don't work for me.
Yeah.
So I've got a great blank canvas with like 3 dates written in every month.
Yeah.
Anyway, the point of that.
And that was our attempt to bring slow living to productivity, because the whole point of the bullet journals is to be intentional. Like, what is slow living?
It depends on who you are and your definition. Because I think it means a lot of things to a lot of different people. So we'll go with what it means for us. We can only talk from our own perspective. For us, slow or intentional living, they're not actually quite the same thing. I think slow living is about slowing down, enjoying the moment a little bit more. You know, we had a conversation this morning of I need to make some oat milk and I don't want to rush that. I want to enjoy that process. That is slow living. It's enjoying the thing that you're doing. So what does slow living mean to you? Remembering that slow and intentional are not necessarily the same.
So to me, I've always associated slow living with de-stress, so low stress, and taking the stress out of a lot of things. Whereas to me, intentional living is more about the how and the what and the why, whereas the slow is the purposefully trying to take the stress out and slowing it all down.
Yeah, so I think slow is in the name. It's about slowing things down, enjoying the moment you're in, and there's a lot of crossover between intentional, like they're almost interchangeable words on the internet.
So you said slow living is about doing everything slower.
Yeah, slowly more, like it's being in the moment, enjoying the moment you are living.
Great, but how do you find time for that?
Well, it's very, very difficult.
Yeah, I think that's almost the opposite of being productive.
Yes. Yeah, hey, well done. That's it. You said the thing about the podcast that this is about.
Yay! So yeah, productivity is about doing as many things as you can in your time, being very efficient. Slow living is like the opposite.
Sort of. But you can still do a lot of things whilst enjoying the fact that you're doing them. It's about, like, if you're making a cup of tea, be present and make that cup of tea. You make that cup of tea.
You make that cup of tea.
Yeah.
You really make that cup of tea. I think actually there's a bit of irony in that when I'm trying to be hyper productive, I get very stressed.
You do, yeah.
And then I actually am not very productive because I'm stressed. But on the days where I just let myself be, I take the slow living mindset. I'm just like, you know what? I'll get what I get done. I actually sometimes get more done than my productive days because I'm less stressed about it and I'm just doing.
Yeah.
And it's less stressful, but I'm being just as or more productive.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of the core of it, is that it feels like if you slow down, everything's going to grind to a halt, because that's what we've been taught to believe. Like, back to McDonald's mindset. The McDonald's kitchen mindset, if you slow down for a second, that's it, the whole restaurant falls apart. And that's how we've kind of been led to believe life works, when actually it doesn't. Like the days where we relax and go, actually, you know what, let's forget our to-do list today. Let's just do what we want to do. How much of our to-do list gets done?
For me, a surprising amount, because a lot of the things on my to-do list are things that I want to get done, not just things I need to get done.
Yeah, but it's also about that recharging the energy. Like, if we take an hour in the morning to go, let's just relax, have a cup of coffee and a chat about whatever it is we fancy talking about, how much energy do we have at the end of that to then go and do things?
Yeah, even today we took a very slow living approach to the day today, and yet here we are doing the thing that we said we would. You know, an hour or two later than I would have liked. So that was my productivity mindset versus that slow mindset.
But if you think back to our very first podcast, we'd only floated the idea of doing a podcast. We'd started to talk about it. We hadn't really put any serious planning in. We took a weekend off and said, we are not going to make any content this weekend. We are not going to do any chores. We're just going to relax. And we recorded our first podcast that day because we gave ourselves the time and space to just enjoy doing and being.
Yeah, that was, yeah. Hey, let's have a relaxing weekend. Nope, now we're going to turn the whole living room upside down, move everything. Puppy was not happy.
Yeah.
And yeah, how did we get there?
We took the weekend off.
Because we took the week. This is definitely a risk with you, is if we take time off and we give you space in your brain.
Oh, I will think of new projects.
Your brain fills it with stuff. So taking slow living with some people is dangerous.
Yeah, because I do, once I get an idea in my head.
Oh, and same with me.
That idea is happening. That's why we're having a new kitchen quite soon.
It's been decided. It might have to wait till next year. We need to come up with the plans.
We do.
Not next year, the year
it's
after.
It's not like really, really soon, but we were talking about, we'll get a new kitchen in 5 years. That's been moved up quite considerably because we started talking about kitchens.
We've got we need to plan that all out.
We've got a lot to think about, yeah.
So again, how would we apply slow living to something like a big project, like getting a new kitchen versus intentionality, or actually is there a time and a place for different things?
There is always a time and place because unfortunately we cannot get rid of stress from our life. We cannot get rid of the to-do list. We have appointments, we have deadlines, we have all of these things. And that has to happen. And a big project like a kitchen is one of those. And it's going to be so stressful because we're going to have to balance different appointments with plumbers and electricians and kitchen people. And
yeah, I guess it's like that slow living is more of a mindset to it. Like I have a lot of envy for people who are, what do we call, we say that they're so laid back, they're horizontal. So people who are just really laid back, I think, have a natural slow living mindset. Yeah,
so we've got a couple of friends like it who they just go through life day to day not worrying about the next thing. That it's just they're living in that day. Yeah. And that seems wonderful.
But also it's taken them how long to get their kitchen done? For no reason other than that they couldn't be bothered being slow living and they're laid back.
Yeah.
So actually you do need to balance that getting on with stuff with a slow living mindset, and it's working them in conjunction to make sure that one isn't making you burn out while the other is not making you not get around to doing anything.
I don't think we will ever suffer from not getting around to doing anything.
I have way too many projects on at the moment.
We have a lot of projects. We always have a lot of projects. And I think this is part of my intentionality. I have given up to not have projects because it doesn't matter. I will always have projects because that's just a core part of who I am.
And so I recognised quite early on that focus topics are very important to me and my core well-being as well. So that's, my latest topic, my latest focus, my latest project. And then you get to hear about it. Yeah. Forever. Yay! Over and over and over and over again. Because, that's what I'm passionate about at the time.
So I think we should probably talk a little bit about slow living, intentional living content. Because this is where our channel, our podcast is situated. That's what we talk about, is being intentional with our home and our life. But there is like not a danger, but there is a difficulty surrounding making content that is inspiring people to be intentional
and slow living. So I think
we're back to the realities of social media.
We're back to the realities of social media where You can, if you are a content creator with a schedule, you actually cannot afford to take a true, I don't want to use the word true, but there's a danger of taking a slow living mentality because you have deadlines. And then you've got to then plan all of those deadlines in. And not only that, but all the tasks that should be slow living that you're then doing, you're then adding the element of recording.
Yeah, it becomes harder. So yeah, a content creator making a slow, peaceful, lovely video, they are not having a slow day. They're just not.
They're not, no. They want you to think they are.
It looks like it because that's how it... Because you only see the bit that's in front of the camera. But yeah, dragging around tripods and lighting and planning out your shots, like, there is an element of slowness in that every job takes about 4 times as long. If you want to dust a mantelpiece, it's going to take you half an hour. So there is something very slow about it.
There is, in the setup and the recording and checking the recording and doing the multiple angles. And then, but mentally it's not slow.
No, there is a lot of mental load involved. And I don't want to sit here and say, oh, content creators have a most difficult job in the world, because they don't. But it's not as easy as it looks.
I guess it's that you could take that and go and apply that to any job. Like, you can't go into your job and take a slow living mentality to your job. You've got deadlines.
Yeah.
And if you have a job where you can take a slow living attitude to your job, then you found a good job.
Yeah, but even if you look at like the homestead farming type content, like, those are jobs that are inherently very deadline based. They're very time focused. It doesn't matter how you're feeling in the morning. Those cows need their feed and milking at 5 a.m. or whatever time that sort of thing happens. I'm talking like I know.
I was going to say not that we would know. This is.
But the same thing. If you have chickens or
we've got a dog and a cat.
Yeah, same symptom applies. They are expecting their food at a certain time of day.
They do like their routines.
And they do.
So do I. I like my routines.
We do.
But then being routined is being routined and having deadlines against slow living? Or is it just making those deadlines and things realistic and making sure you've applied plenty of time for them?
I think you can apply intentional or slow living ideologies to pretty much anything. It's much more about your mindset than it is anything else.
And there is something that is said in the workplace, is no matter how long you think something is going to take, double that time and it will still take you longer. Because there's always things that come up, and it's you don't want to be constantly stressing. Being realistic with that time, is that actually just all slow living is? It's actually giving you the appropriate amount of time to do a task and do it well.
Yeah, intentional. Yeah, be intentional about it. Be realistic. Prioritise what you need to do. Time to look after yourself. You know what? If you've got a big project at work and you need a tea break halfway through it, go for your tea break.
Yeah, and make sure you're taking your screen breaks. Don't laugh at me.
I know how important your screen breaks are.
I take my screen breaks very seriously. Thank you very much. They are important to my mental well-being, and my work supports this. That's also my work supports that because they recognise how fundamental self-care is to actually, as we talked about earlier, having high productivity is actually highly dependent on how stressed you are. And it's that stitch in time concept of, if you take a few moments to just and breathe and have a moment and have a screen break and do your self-care, you're actually going to be more productive in the other things. And actually the slow living makes you more productive. And if you are clever, if you've planned that in and you've recognised that and you do that in a clever way to make it work together, then slow living and high productivity can work together.
Yes, if you say intentional rather than slow, it works much better, I think.
But as we said earlier, like, intentional can be very fast paced.
It can, but it can also be very slow.
But it can also be very slow. So unless you're intentionally being slow, and I think it needs both mindsets. and it is that self-care is an important part of slow living, because it recognises that actually plodding along and doing things, you do get somewhere, and you get somewhere often faster. And that self-care is an important fundamental part of that. I would say another thing to be very aware of with this fast-paced obsession with productivity is when you be productive for productive's sake, when you can go home and someone goes, what did you do? And you can reel off all of these things that you've done, but actually...
Oh, all you have to do is ask why.
Yes.
Why?
Why did you do that? Oh.
So I used to work with someone that had that must be productive at all times mindset, and she would follow a to-do list. She would follow a process all day, every day, without question. And like, she really struggled when one of us would go in and say, "Yeah, but why?
Right? Why are you doing that? Why are you doing it that way? Why are you?"
If you do it this way, it'll take you half an hour of time, and then you can have a cup of tea. Obsessed with having a cup of tea today.
But someone who's highly productive and obsessed with productivity, instead of having a cup of tea, they'll just do the next task.
Yes.
And then before you know it, you've spent all day doing things and not looked after yourself.
Yeah, whereas I have a real flaw in my character where I hate doing anything that doesn't feel like it is worth doing. Like, I am a nightmare for authority figures. Because if I can't see a point in doing something, I'm really, really difficult.
Yeah, me too. I am.
Yeah.
And it often doesn't take much, but you just need to have that inkling of an understanding of what they're trying to get at and why it's important to them.
Yeah.
But if it's I want you to do this because I told you to.
Yeah, no, that's not. No,
yeah,
that doesn't work well.
That ain't happening.
No, that does not work. I can be quite stubborn. I'm not sure if you've noticed.
Luckily, you live with someone who has the other side of, I need to be able to explain the reason behind everything that I do. So you can always ask me why, and I will always have a very long-winded reason that may or may not be logically sound, but there is a reason.
Well, you're also willing to have different ideas and different ways of doing it.
Yes, which I do think is very important to have that mental flexibility.
But we got a bit sidetracked.
Don't be productive for productive's sake was the moral of that story.
Yeah, the moral of that story is don't be productive just because you feel like you need to be productive.
And that's the intentionality behind what you're doing. So again,
fill your to-do list with things that you actually need to do, not stuff you think you need to do to make yourself look busy. Unless looking busy is really important to, keeping your job or something. I have had jobs where looking busy was really, really important. That's why I've got a really good I'm busy face while I'm not doing anything. As long as you stare hard enough at a computer screen, people think you're doing something.
You're doing something, yeah. So I do think that slow living and intentionality and productivity, as we said at the beginning, they're three very different, distinct concepts and ideas. And they all kind of work together and against each other.
Depending on how you use them.
Yeah. I guess what people probably want to know the most is, how can I de-stress my life while being productive?
So if anyone ever finds the answer to that question, please do let us know.
And I think that is the answer to me, and this is very personal because this is how I think I've worked out how I do it, is that blend of intentionality, prioritisation, and then giving yourself the time to do the things. So just being realistic with that time, and so taking a slow approach to your intentional plan.
I think I have an almost more ethereal way of looking at it than you do. Yes, those things. But also, I have a real craving right now to enjoy being, enjoy living, enjoy our house, just enjoy being here.
You are welcome to enjoy my presence. I fully endorse and understand this.
You know what I mean? I want to enjoy our house. I want us to enjoy cleaning it, looking after it, doing the garden, all of these things.
Yeah, your intention behind the slow living is to appreciate and be grateful for what we have.
Yes.
And through that have a less stressed life, because gratitude and
Not chasing some
you're not
pipe dream
chasing
constantly.
Yeah, you're not constantly trying to get
Yeah,
in the moment.
Because we actually have a really nice little cosy life here. We should enjoy that.
And the worst thing is, my immediate reaction to this is, but there's room for improvement, and that's the productivity talking. It's like, no, it's okay to just maintain.
Yes.
And maintenance takes effort.
It does. And you're right, there are improvements that we want to make. We have spent this morning talking about them.
Yes.
If you watch our YouTube videos, expect to see progress on that. Next year, probably now.
Next year or the year after, we'll
we'll make progress next year on things. It won't be the kitchen.
No, this is true, yeah. But we've got
plans.
It's a whole thing. But we're going to take a slow and intentional approach to it. It's all too much.
Yes.
It's not going to be the reality, but that will be the plan.
So anyway, I think that's probably a good place to end this. I'm not sure we really got to the bottom of where intentional, slow and productivity meet or don't meet, but we tried.
Well, I think we've ambled on enough. Hopefully someone can summarise that for us in the comments and be like, this is what you actually meant.
Yeah.
And then we can agree or disagree with you.
Yeah, but we actually do live quite an intentional life. That intentional life does not mean it's not stress-free. We do have quite a lot of stress. We're quite busy most of the time. We don't have time to be particularly slow about anything.
And yet we do have our moments. We do plan in time to go out for coffee, to do some planning, because we know that change of scenery is actually part of that slowness, part of that. We know it's going to take us, like if we sat and planned here, the planning would be over in 20 minutes because we've got other things we want to be doing.
Yeah, we're at home and there's 4 million projects staring us in the face.
Yeah, whereas actually going out for a coffee, you actually give it that time and attention and that slowness.
Yes, and we really enjoy doing that.
Yeah.
But anyway, thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed this. If you did, give us a follow, give us a subscribe, depending on where you're listening. And I hope that whatever your intentionality is for the day, you are enjoying it, and we will chat again soon.
Bye!